Imagine if you were wealthy, with almost anything you could want, all the houses or cars you could ever need, not even having to work another day in your life. Sounds nice, doesn't it? Now imagine if all of your wealth was taken away in a single moment. This is what happened to Zeno in 300 BC. Living in Cyprus, he was transporting his entire fortune across the Mediterranean when a storm hit and destroyed his boat, along with all of his fortune. In a couple of minutes, this man went from being a rich man to a poor beggar, living off the kindness of others. How would you react if your entire life fortune was swept away by a couple of rainy clouds? Would it be with anger, sorrow, confusion, self-pity? Well, a shipwrecked Zeno reacted with pain until he found a book, the Memorabilia of Socrates, which would inspire him to start studying the principles of Stoics, another philosophy made in 380 BC. These principles he learned made him understand the situation he was in, and no longer wallow in his sadness. Because of his new discovery, he would later found the Stoic school of philosophy. That philosophy would then become a major part of many people's lives, all the way until the 3rd century AD. From slaves, as in Epictetus, which his name literally means acquired, and even to one of the most powerful men in history, as in Marcus Aurelius, will all become Stoics. According to Zeno, although we don't have much control over what happens to us, we do have control of how it may affect us. We must use this control to great effect. This mindset is now viewed as being unbreakable. The idea of not focusing on the past, as that is something you cannot change, but focusing on the now, as this is something you can change, and affect to later help in your future. Stoicism is a philosophy of life that maximizes positive emotions and reduces negative ones, which is done by the 4 virtues, which are courage, temperance, justice, and wisdom. Each virtue is a guide for your actions, a compass to point you in the right direction during hardship, times of confusion, and everyday life. Basically, these virtues are tools for you to deal with the problems of today, so in the later, you'll have tranquility and peace. The virtue of courage is a tool that helps you understand your capabilities, your maximums, and your limits. You might ask how. Well, let's say you've been wanting to start a company. You've dreamed about it for years. If you were never to build up the courage to take that risk, you wouldn't have been able to know if you were truly capable of succeeding. Never knowing your potential. Seneca, one of the 3 major Stoic philosophers, used to pity people with easy lives, as he thought that they wasted their potential. He once said, "You have passed through life without an opponent. No one can ever know what you are capable of, not even you." It also doesn't only apply to those big decisions of life, those day-to-day decisions. Are you going to work out or stay home and relax and waste your physical potential of your young body? Or are you going to do that extra bit of work for your project or just play a game that in the end doesn't even satisfy you? These small day-to-day decisions build up and eventually make up who you are as a person. This perfectly coincides with the virtue of temperance, as some of you may have already thought, well, if we all live our lives making risky choices, then we'd make some very stupid choices and ruin our lives. And you're right. This is why temperance, or the more modern term, moderation, comes into play. There's a very famous metaphor by Aristotle, the golden mean. He once said that on one end of the spectrum, there was cowardice. On the other, recklessness. What was called for, what we required then, was a golden mean, the right amount. It meant that don't do anything in excess, good or bad. Our bodies need water. It's 78% water. But if you drink too much of it, you die. Or let's say you decide to treat yourself to a nice dinner. Since you worked hard for the whole week, treat yourself too much, you run out of money. Since we are what we repeatedly do. Aristotle also said, therefore, excellence is not an act, but a habit. This is how we are to accomplish these goals that we have. Want a car? Get a job. Work the hours you get. Save a little every day, and before you know it, you'll have enough for the car. Or want good grades? Go to school. Do the assigned homework the day it's assigned. Study the days you need to study. And boom, there's that 4.0 GPA. These two virtues are the staple of Stoicism. But the virtue of justice is what all Stoics value the most. The idea of doing the right thing. This virtue has helped by not just making people more kind and hospitable, but as well as helping change the world for the better. It has led many men and women to fight for justice. The idea of democracy and equality all came from these basic principles of Stoicism. Much of the reason why we fight the struggles of today originated from this principle of Stoicism. Stoics are made to see the world, not for what it is, but what it could be. The potential of that world. Now, what are all of these virtues good for if you don't know how to apply it at the right times? That's when the virtue of wisdom comes in. Zeno used to say, we are given one mouth and 2 ears for a reason, as we should listen more than we talk. As well, with our eyes, that we should observe before we talk, as we were given these tools in order of importance. We have to first learn, experience, and live before we can apply the other virtues. Let's reuse the example of the restaurant again. If you had never cooked, then how would you run a restaurant? Or how about we put it in more common terms? Let's say you want to go to the gym. You cannot expect to be the strongest guy in the gym if you have never worked out. You first have to learn. Learn the proper technique, learn the science, then experience. Experience the feeling of working out by working out at home. Get used to the feeling. And now you can live the gym life. The goal isn't just to get information, but it is to get the right type of information that isn't all the noise. As we struggle today with misinformation, these Stoics struggled with it as well, and the way to deal with it is with wisdom. But we must stay humble, as if we would become poisoned with the trait of arrogance, we'd be unable to learn anymore. As it is key that we study, that we keep our minds open, always. You cannot learn that which you think you already know. These are the principles of the ancient philosophy of Stoicism. Now, you might be wondering as to how to apply it to your day-to-day life. Well, there's many practices for that. Most famously, Dichotomy of control. This was a principled practice, and that was preached by all major Stoics. The principle was basically, it is what it is. It was a principle that, in our lives, we have some things that are and aren't in our control. And we must only worry about what we can control. Most of our lives, we spend worrying about others and what they think of us. This, in a Stoic's point of view, is useless, not important to their mind, as it is out of their control over what others think of them. Seneca once stated that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. We waste it by worrying about the uncontrollable, and because of that, it makes us anxious and worsens our life. As well, That time we spend worrying is time wasted. If you ever find yourself mad at a situation, ask yourself, is it in my control? If so, then don't worry. And if not, then don't worry. Here's a good representation of it. Stoics try to have a very simple way of dealing with the problems that life gives them. One of the most simple ones is negative visualization. All you'd have to do is to expect the worst outcome. That's it. But the reason why they do it is a bit more complex. It was because when you would imagine bad scenarios, you'd be ready for them and would be able to deal with the situation better and more calmly. Let me give you a scenario. Let's say you're having a birthday party and you're worried about no one coming. If you expect and envision no one coming, you'd be better prepared if you expected it to be a success. Although it sounds pretty counterintuitive, it helps us prepare for our day and the harsh reality of life. As Marcus Aurelius once said, begin each day by telling yourself, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. All of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil. This way, no matter what in life, you come out of it feeling satisfied with the result. These were the same tools used by Marcus Aurelius as he dealt with the plague and war. The same tools used by Epictetus as he went from slave to statesman. And as for you, that story is still being written.